The episode you're about to listen to with Marlene Ertlmaier was meant to be just a 30-minute interview so we could meet each other. But the conversation surrounding the divine feminine and our disconnection from our spiritual understanding of energy was so deep and so passionate and so compassionate for humans that have been missing something in this life. And I think many of us are disconnected from our power. And that power is our energy, our authenticity, our truth. But often we struggle to understand how to apply those things in our life. And in this conversation, we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about stepping back into the divine feminine and what that means for you and how you can use that in your life to grow. Because let's be real. I mean, all of us are trying to move from one place to another. And I think that destination that we're trying to achieve is love within ourselves. But it can be very difficult to arrive there because we are not given the tools and education on how to get there. But this episode is going to give you some tools, some education, and it's going to bring some realizations to truths that are happening in and around us, surrounding our spiritual connection, which is a connection to love, and our connection to nature, and our connection to ourselves. And a lot of that is cultivated through the divine feminine. So this episode is really here to teach you something about how to grow. I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did having it, because it's a beautiful, deep conversation. Very, very poetic in many aspects. Leave me a comment, what you thought about the episode and what you're going through in your life so that I can create more episodes to help you grow within your life as well. Like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and much love for your practicing the things that we talk about in these episodes. There's a lot more in the previous episodes that can help you grow as well, but I really hope you enjoy this one.
Okay.
Radical provocation. First off, like poetry in motion. What a statement. I love that. I love the name of it. And I love, like, it's poetry, man. Like it's truth. It's deep. I think poetry is passion, and it's cultivated out of emotion. And I think that, we have an idea of what poetry should be, a rhyming format or spoken word, but when I listened to that video of traumatized children, I was just like, wow, like what a beautiful way to put that. And like the realization of the reality of the truth of what you're saying is even, it's just like, it's just inspiring, and it's an awakening within itself. I mean, even myself, like I look into these things, but when you speak about fertility and our divorce between our parents and this separation, I was like, good Lord, Marlene, like, thank you. Like, that was good.
You're so welcome. Thank you for receiving. Thank you.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I really believe that is what's happening on a global scale. Like collectively, I think everyone that has not woken up to the realization that we are not only all traumatized, but this trauma is in itself the basis of all the exploiting, disruptive and destructive systems that we see on this planet. And as soon as we actually tap into what it means to not only realize that trauma, but integrate it back into wholeness in a sense, and see how we can act not from that wounded place, but actually from a place of connectedness, self-worth, appreciation, not only of my desires, but also of the others. Because I mean, what trauma does is literally rupture our connection to reality and to life as a whole. So I think, yeah, as I started to realize more and more how we are all affected by that, and how this reality, this matrix is literally designed not only to provoke that, but really to play on this and to constantly perpetuate these cycles in which we are not only diminishing ourselves, but by that basically manipulating and hurting everyone around us, because we are constantly trying to grab appreciation and love that we haven't gotten as children. basically.
It's just generational as well. Like, I mean, that
Totally.
trauma, like, and if we describe trauma with an action, it's fear. It's essentially fear from an uncomfortable experience through unprocessed emotions. And that fear, you know, like you say, is being passed on generation to generation. And this is the thing that we're all up against is overcoming that fear and stepping back into that power, but removing ourselves from an egotistical viewpoint where we seek validation and self-worth and value external from us.
Totally.
I think that that's where you really speak. All of what you say is just fantastic, but it comes from like the divine feminine, which it, like, to me, I've been looking for people like this. I've been trying to align myself with that frequency because the women, regardless of where you are in the world, you know, even, you know, you were talking in one of your other videos talking about spirituality being used as a business and a statistical viewpoint for people to make money off of, and they really haven't done the work yet. They're calling in other individuals to do their course and to learn from what they know. And it's like, you're using an egotistical viewpoint to sell your business. Like, you're totally imbalanced. What the hell would I buy from you? You know? I see this shit.
You're selling delusion, basically. And I mean, that's already what the system is selling us. So no, thank you. Thank you, but no.
Yeah. But the reality is that is a trend right now. It's hilarious that, like, that's the trend. And people, I've seen people doing this, like people that I know are complete messes. And they're selling this idea, like, I can help you through your trouble. I can help this. I know this. I know this. I'm like, you're a fucking mess. Like, how are you going to help anybody? You haven't even helped yourself. So you haven't done any of the work.
And it's so interesting. No, I love that you speak on this because it has been the biggest point that has estranged me, not only from most of the social circles and kind of groups of whatever that I was getting into. And now, especially the new age spirituality tribe, which is all about a fake wellness and superiority and elitism, but constantly perpetuating these cycles that we want to escape from. And it's an interesting fine line, I feel like, because on one hand, I do believe that we are all teachers and that we are all guides for others, and no matter what we embody. But that is exactly the point. Do we actually embody what we are speaking upon? Like, are we practicing what we're preaching? And this is where I've come so often into a clash of like, yeah, okay, you want to teach that, but are you sure that you're not just extracting someone else's energy because they are putting you on a pedestal and they are seeing you as something that you want to see yourself at, but you are totally not yet there. Otherwise, you wouldn't need all these fancy words and labels and definitions about telling people what you're selling them, because then you are actually just doing that. You're selling them out.
Or even followers and views and like they embed themselves within these things so that gives them the internal validation because they don't know how to peel back their own layers. And, you know, I find like people like that have this awareness or who do the work. I don't believe the work's ever done until the experience is done, because every time I reach the peak of a mountain, I find myself at the base of a new one. And I'm like, all right, let's keep going. You know what I mean? Like, how far can I go? And for me in this life, I think when I had my own little awakening, which was just a connection back to love, I became a student of love. And when I became a student of love, I told myself I wanted to become a master. I had no idea what that means. And to be honest with you, that was 4 years ago. To say that I don't know what that means today would not be true because I've been seeking it for 4 years. But to say that I completely understand that, no. And I don't feel I will until the journey is over. That's when the actuality of the realization comes in of what I've done, because I have all of my experiences through my actions that allowed me to live in my understanding of the mastery of love, right? So, and I think that that's such a beautiful thing when we're talking from like an education perspective. But I agree with you. These other individuals or spiritual fucking communities are just like watered down, regurgitated.
Echo chambers.
Yeah, exactly. Echo chamber, regurgitated in text from someone else. Hello.
Hello. He
Hey,
seems very
buddy.
curious. What is going on here? That is my
Yeah.
little shepherd puppy
Hello, boy, girl.
boy.
Hey, boy. Nice one. I heard him before. I wondered if he was going to show himself. Nice one. What's his name?
Anubis.
Anubis. Ooh, I love it.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
That
I,
came to me in a dream and it seemed very big, but then also very fitting because he's a very special, deep character. So I'm glad to have him by my side. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think this is exactly where the divine feminine comes into and where it for me has been such a journey to connect to that and to try to really propagate that essence into the world into some sense, because I feel like already that term, I'm a big lover of words, as you have noticed, and I'm playing with these kind of etymologies, like where does something actually come from? And already the term and this whole idea of divine feminine has been so watered down and so distorted and so hijacked in so many senses that even I needed to work through all these things of like, oh, so am I trying to embody the divine feminine? What does that actually mean? And then coming ever closer to the realization that we don't have any clue about what it actually means until we step into it more and more and realize that all of it has been a lie, so to say. And then by that, having the responsibility and the courage and also the softness and the kind of openness to confront all of that, because I feel a lot of times we think that divine feminine is ever accepting and ever tolerating everything that is going on. But in my opinion and in my experience, it's exactly the contrary. It's having a sharp sword and a sharp tongue and a super soft open heart, but also stepping in to call everyone and first of all ourselves up out on the bullshit that we are contributing to in this world. Because in the end, what is the feminine for me is this fierce lioness energy of stepping up for the kids and protecting the tribe. And if not the women are going to protect the kids and make sure that there's a safe space to bring forth a new generation or to birth a project, then who is going to do that? And I feel like that is exactly what's happening nowadays in this corrupted, distorted, patriarchal capitalist system where these qualities have been not only put to the back, but in a way really, turned around and made forgotten.
well, they're not just capitalizing on natural resources and profits in every sector that they possibly can. They capitalize on our energy and they capitalize on our understandings and they capitalize on our spiritual connections. Capitalism is a totalitarian perspective, like individuals that are leading from greed, power, and control. And I mean, we're talking about religious sects, we're talking about government sects, we're talking about this whole one-eyed triangle that has a lot of the ability to create the system that we are all bound by and then manipulate psychological patterns based on normalities, which are completely fucking abnormal in society. And I think that ability to step into that truth, embody an energy, and allow yourself to understand what your role is within that energy, like you say, like fertility, nurturing, the youth, strength, like the ability to stand up through our authenticity and through our truth and have a voice and not be put down by fear. That to me is the magic of stepping into energies, because that's everything that we are is in energy and vibrations and frequencies. And we're all gods and goddesses because we have the ability to create our own reality. So if we create a reality out of fear, you're going to be held back. But if you step into that truth and you step into that power, you're going to step out and you're going to stand out, which is a beautiful thing. And you're doing that. And I appreciate that.
And you are too, my dear.
Yeah,
we're on the path of the spiral dance and always realizing that we thought we knew. And then by that, knowing already a little bit more, which is we don't know anything, but we're trying. I love that image of humans trying to nail down the shore of the ocean by putting words on this experience, like we are always just trying to grasp something that is so undescribable. And I feel like that is exactly the magic of shadow work also, because we are constantly bringing stuff from the unconscious to the conscious. And by that, literally altering not only our whole reality, but the reality of not only everyone that we meet, but everyone that is walking this reality with us. Because as you say, as we are creators, if we tap into that energy, we can only inspire that energy in others, because we will confront some things. And even if we're not in resonance, that means that we are probably going to trigger something that might not even have an effect in that moment. But I love the idea that we are creating ripples all over through that. And that is basically why it's so important that we don't stop talking about it, and why I love that we are having this conversation here, because yes, it's beautiful that we're all going through this awakening in our own terms. And I do truly believe that everyone is right now confronted to some sort of pulling the veils apart and being like, what the fuck is actually going on? But at the same time, every single human can kind of act as a lighthouse and as a signpost in whatever form, even if free will is always the highest priority, but we can at least leave some pebble stones along the way, and trust that people will be drawn to it in the right moment. And that even if you provoke, and even if it's very radical what you say, and some people are just gonna like shrug their head and be like, what the fuck? I think that already is a support in itself also, because it's questioning. It's, even if you don't provide the answers for everyone, I believe that you can at least initiate some questions.
Absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. Like, it's through our action that we really discover a reaction or another cause, or, something inspire something within someone else. It's just when we remain dormant that everything seems to continue to be manipulated and programmed and systemized behind the veil, because that's the way the Wizard of Oz is pulling the strings right now. So it's really, but what I've found is that people don't find much value in their story, because worth and value is dictated externally from them. And because we're so divided and disconnected, they don't feel that their difficulties, their traumas, their experiences have any connection to anyone else. And a lot of what I talk about is that is the lighthouse within the darkness. That is where you find the lighthouse. That's how you become the lighthouse, is understanding that your experiences, whether, your father left, or your mother was controlling, or you were physically or sexually abused, you went through this difficult experience. Why? I have no idea. But the reality is we can't look back. We can only look in the moment. So you went through it, and you know all aspects of it because you lived it. And there's 8 billion people on the planet that we can share that education with, which turns that, that experience into a power, because you've taken back your power in a powerless situation and you repurpose it as purpose for another individual, which makes it fucking priceless. And it's like all of us, in your own unique individual experience, are walking around with priceless information that is valuable to everyone around you. Simply because you have a story and you learned something and other people can learn from you. And that's everything.
I totally agree. And I think that's the real alchemy. And you've been talking about becoming a master of love. And I think that is that also, that we come to love even our darkest experiences and our most difficult challenges. And through that, step into connection again. It's like you say, like every one of us has such a treasure chest full of, not only the pleasure and all the nice stuff and the success, but also of pain and of shadows and of so many things that we have, overcome, and that we have transformed and transmuted into gold, basically. And that's, I think, one of the saddest, effects of this dividing and disrupting society that we live in and that we are forced to live in, is not only the illusion of separation, but also the fact that our intrinsic self-worth gets cut and that we don't realize anymore what we are carrying inside, and that already experiencing and living in the way that we do is already the gift that we offer to creation, because we are dreaming ourselves into existence by living that, and that by living in denial and not wanting to see where we have gone wrong and not seeing what we have to share with this world, we are basically giving that away to a system that, like you already said, is sucking our life energy, and that is kind of digging at our self-worth. And that is basically what's happening. I mean, on that level, we could call it human farming, we could call it life energy harvesting, but it's all based on the premise that we believe we are separate. We believe that we have nothing to give to this world that is not coming from the inside, but it's all doing, accumulating and measuring and competing. And if we overcome that, that is the click, so to say, like not only realizing that we are all interconnected with the web of life, and that what we realize we can offer to someone else, and that what another is dealing with, we are dealing with or have dealt on another level, like that in itself is opening so many possibilities.
Yeah. I like how well, for me, I contemplate like psychology. I think it's a beautiful thing if we understand how people think, and we can understand how they feel, and we can understand how to motivate, inspire, or we can understand how to control. And this current system has understood how to control individuals. But for me, I am looking for the antidote to that, to really have them step back into that power. And what I have come to witness is that this disconnection and control of our spiritual connection being dictated to us by an external father in the sky that is nowhere near us, that is highly judgmental, like you say in your video, which I absolutely love how you put that. But it's been severed for us. And, you know, if we talk about spirituality, like I've really been trying to learn new ways to talk about it, to really have it affect a collective understanding and awareness, and really have it hit the mark, which is the heart. And becoming a student of love, you know, really what I've learned is spirituality is love. So, and really, like, one more than that, spirituality is love in action. Like, that is actually what it is. It's one thing to love yourself. That's fine there, but there's a lot of action that comes within that, within self-love and self-care, and cultivating that connection that's been distorted and manipulated and taken away from us by ideologies that are 2,500 years old and have spent a long time creating this image of for what we should believe in. But I loved how you said, like, you know, the simplicity of all things are spirits because all things are energy. So if we just step outside and we look at the mountains and we look at the trees and we look at the rain and the sun, and it's like all of this is curated out of energy. So if I am energy, I am a part of all of this. It's not really that far out of our reach. It's right in, and if you're sitting at your kitchen table with your family member, it's right in front of you. All of the connection to spirit is right there. So it's a beautiful thing the way you put that, and I appreciate you for that, because and I talk about with nature and the connection back to these simplistic formats as well. But I think that that's a lot of what I'm trying to do, as you know, within my narrative of, and my action and my example is really to show people, you know, like, this is what it means to step back in your power and step out of the matrix, essentially.
So beautiful. Yeah, I'm smiling because I've often come to this point of free people, right? Like, you can only be a beacon of hope if you make it easy for people to understand, because I feel like this system is built so much on overcomplicating, on overthinking, on overanalyzing. I mean, we are literally accumulating securities and insurances and all these labels and numbers and whatever stuff to cut us from the simplest of all realizations, which is you are spirit, and spirit is in you, and it's permeating all of existence. And if you take off your shoes and walk into the forest barefoot, and if you commune with the plant spirits and with the mushroom teachers and with whatever is gifted to us by the highest existence, which is also in our heart, like, that is literally becoming so easy that it's nearly ridiculous. And then it's paradoxical how complicated it is to access that in this reality, or how easy it is to be pulled again into all these should do's and would and could and whatever things. But it's like you say, it's leading people back to simplicity through love and through the easiness that lives inside our heart. I mean, the heart doesn't require all of these things. It's basically, layered over it in some sense. So I really appreciate the idea of bringing people back to nature and to their own nature, which is always the simplest and most pervasive, but also the most intelligent and most complex. I mean, if you've ever really looked at an orchid or at a butterfly or at a hummingbird, you know what I mean? Like, it's so clear that this is it. And if we can see ourselves with the same marvel, and if we can look through what a person says and what they believe in and what they condemn about you and how they are trapped in all of their stories and wounds, then we can see that marvel again in them, and through that recognize ourselves and the divine. And I think that is the power of love in the end. And already that is also complicated or complex, let's say, thing, because the definition or our idea of love itself has also been so distorted and so played upon, and how much we are disconnected from the fact that there is not the one love. I mean, yes, everything is love, but yet love has so many different shapes and forms and dynamics. I mean, the love that I have for my mother will not be the same that I have for the tree outside of my house, but yet it is all coming back to the same essence. So how also there the capitalist society has distorted and made very disruptive and very hollow this idea of love, and also the fact of needing to work for it or needing to attain a certain ideal in order to be worthy of love. I think that is also a very toxic dynamic that we are being presented to. Yeah.
I think it's interesting how you offered two perspectives, how you visualize love or actualize love for your mother and then actualize love for a tree. And I thought about myself in that position when you said that. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like I can totally relate to that, because to me, like the tree and the love that I get from nature is so pure. It's so clean. It never asks anything of me. More so, it shows up with gratitude and says, thank you for being here and helping perpetuate the evolution. Whether you show up in a forest conscious that you are a part of the evolutionary process of ascension into a higher density, the forest doesn't care whether you know that or not, because it knows that it's helping you to remember that. So when I'm the same, like when I show up in these spaces like that, I'm just like a child. I'm just like surrounded by wisdom embedded through the roots of this system. It's like, it's just such a magical thing to really be a part of. And you really see nature. Like for me, nature's such a beautiful teacher. Every time I step outside, we live like outside of Vancouver here in British Columbia. It's very, very beautiful place.
Beautiful, yes.
And I look outside right now, and it all just works together. Humans are the things that complicate that poetic distribution of connection, and growth and death. The forest teaches me that really, though, there's no such thing as death. No, I don't just learn this from nature, but I learn this from other things as well. But nature is such a beautiful, simplistic teacher. When you look at death, you see a tree falls over, and the root system is still embedded within all of the things around it, but it actually alchemizes into becoming something beautiful for something else. And that's what all of us have power to do within our experience, is to take the beautiful experience, have it mean something, turn it into purpose, which is education for other people that they can grow in their life.
Yes.
It's power.
It's like emotional composting, no? I love to make these kind of garden analogies, because as you say, like once you step out in nature and see how it works all in a natural cycle and with these natural organic laws. That's also why I use the term fertility, right? Because basically what our system does is constantly trying to plastify and artificially conserve and kind of make things stagnant, and we build dams and we disrupt rivers and we rake our leaves and we put them into plastic bags because we can't see stuff rotting, and I don't know, we rip out the weeds and we disrupt the natural cycles of life. And I think when you step out of that and you see how the trees don't hold on to their leaves in winter, and when you see that the dying tree or animal is always so much life and so much abundance for so many other microorganisms, and how the mushrooms are basically the bridge between life and death, and how they can also do that in our bodies. That's why I love to talk about the mushrooms as teachers also on so many levels, because they are basically teaching us that there is nothing to hold on to once it has served its purpose. It's going to go over into a new state, and it's going to become even more valuable in that sense, because that's why I love the image of alchemy also. It becomes from lead, from something that is weighing us down, can become gold, and it can become something with so much potential. And that is our trauma in the end also. I mean, our trauma can serve as the catalyst of realizing the depth of our love and the depth of our capacity of resilience. And yeah, the forest doesn't cry about the trees being cut down. It's already making the new seedlings sprout around it, and it's fortifying the mycelium to transport the nutrients to the other trees. And I think that's something that we can really learn from observing that, and not trying to put our definitions and our narrow-minded ideas on it. Because yeah, I mean, what religion is also feeding upon, and what this capitalist society of stagnation and of accumulation is feeding upon, is the fear of death, essentially. Like all of the fear-based narratives that we are playing. Oh, you're going to be homeless. You're not going to have money. You're not going to have insurance, and your children and this and that. It all comes down to you're going to die. And guess what? We all are. So it's like, how can we actively, consciously, and compassionately prepare ourselves to die by constantly confronting to this web of life and to this cycle of you're never going to be the same that you were yesterday. So if you're already stepping into constantly dying over and over again, then maybe you don't have to hold on so forcefully to all these like material stable things, you know, that are basically just keeping you stuck.
And I for me personally, and I think the death in the actual physical world is one of the most beautiful realities ever possess. It happened to me 4 years ago. I died in this life, and I was reborn free of my behaviors, free of my experiences, free from my egotistical bound of being less. And I alchemized that lead, like you say, that those difficult experiences, those uncomfortable feelings, all of that trauma, by allowing love to come into my life. And I didn't have it all figured out right away, but it certainly was showing me that I could use it as a tool. And if I used love as a tool to go through all of this dense energy that had already happened, that I didn't need to carry anymore, and I could let go, and I could look at the trees as letting go of the leaves to make room for something new, and that just helps them grow and grow and grow to these big, beautiful things. It never holds them back. Then I could see that I could do that in my life as well. And I also saw how healthy that was. I was like, wow, I'm carrying, for 23 years, all of this trauma surrounding these uncomfortable feelings that I just didn't want to address, but I more so avoided them because I didn't have the tools and education. And society has normalized not talking about how we feel and creating identities to allow people to accept us for the normalcy that is society, when in reality it's completely abnormal to be living the way we live, and to value money the way we value, and to put worth and value of human life in this fictitious format of a measurement of wealth. And it's like, this is just completely defective to my growth process to believe in. So I decided to believe in myself more than anything else. And when I was in that jail cell and I had that moment of clarity, I realized I didn't understand so much of what was happening in the sky with an old man and this ideology that's been fed to us, that I need to put all my belief and surrender all my power to this individual that I don't even connect with, because he's not even here, but he's watching me all the time and he's judging me. I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Like, if God is derived of a higher density than we are, well, then he would certainly be curated out of love, because only here in these third densities are we really living within uh, this confused state of power that we all possess. But God would certainly be evolved enough to understand pure love. So to think that I have a judgmental, fictitious man in the sky that doesn't have my well-being at hand, that just didn't work for me. I realized that I was actually made in God's image, which was derived of a divine masculine and divine feminine, which all of us possess, this divine masculine, divine feminine. And I realized that they spoke a lot about God being a creator. So I thought, wow, okay, well, if God's inside of me, I have this divine feminine, I have this divine masculine energy. What can I create with this? So I have an ability to really create my reality by letting go of what does not serve me, live in the present moment, and understand who I am through truth and authenticity. That's it. That was the simplistic format I used. That was the formula that I used that helped me really see my place in time and see governments and religious organizations kind of for, the individuals that they were. They didn't have my best interests at hand. And I certainly didn't need to put all of my attention and energy into what they were doing, because I could see it for what it was. It was more so, just do what I can do in my life. That's my whole world right here. Things that are out of my control, I just let them be as they will. All I can do is just do what's inside of Justin, and let's see what we can do with this thing.
And radiate out from there, right? That's also the beauty of it.
Sick.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that you talk about the distant father in the sky, because I have also been growing up in a pretty Catholic Christian environment in Bavaria, the south of Germany. And I went full on, because that's what you do in the village. You go to church every Sunday. Your grandma takes you there. You sit there. You listen to stuff that you don't understand. There is this huge bleeding, crucified dude with the thorns on his head, blood running down. It was low-key traumatizing me every Sunday, but that's what you do, right? And afterwards you get nice food and you put on your nice shoes and whatever. But what has always bugged me, and I went the path of doing the bells and going there for children's reading, and I asked all the questions because I was curious, right? I was, as you, believing that there was some higher force looking down on me and being in connection with me to some sort. But I think I was as young as 11 or 12 years old when I started to freak out by realizing that that is not at all the story that we are being told. No, we are being watched over and we are being punished because we have fallen from paradise, and we are constantly being observed and, I don't know, criticized for our sins or for the sins of our forefathers. And you cannot really talk to God directly, but you have to like confess your sins to some kind of priest that is the middleman to you, but he's hiding. Like, all of it just didn't make any sense to my childish, innocent heart of, but I thought God loved me. Like, that is not my ideal of love. Like, on one hand, we are singing songs every Sunday, how you are my shepherd and whatever shit, but are you actually watching over me with love? Is there care and nurturing in it? And I think that's when I started more and more to wake up to the realization that this cannot be true. And I'm very, very happy that I had the strength and the rebellious spirit to break out of that and to leave the village at a very young age and to get out of church and to not fall into these traps, because I do see people still suffering greatly under these implements, even if they are not radically Catholic or they are not going to church every Sunday. This is still the premise upon which our Western world is built upon, right? Like, I don't think it's normal that there is people preaching on the Bible in America, in the courts or whatever, because basically it's all mind control in that sense. Like, we are being formatted to believe in a false God, because my God doesn't judge and hate and send catastrophes upon the earth because we are sinful and shameful, and we have to cover ourselves up, and we should dominate all the creeping, crawling animals and beings on this earth. That is not the God or goddess that I want to preach to, right? So I think we have an obligation also as humans to not only take back our definition of love, but also take back our definition of God, because I have shredded at the concept of God for a long time because I was so implemented with these parasitic beliefs of you need to pay your dues in a way. And if I believe in a concept of divinity, then it's that this life was gifted to me, to all of us, and that this existence is the biggest gift that we then also give back to the whole by being a co-creator, by being in our divine masculine and feminine, and by that having this bilateral communion with the divine again, because what the divine wants for us, I feel, is to live in love and in abundance and in truth. So yeah.
And connection
and connection.
And I agree, like, with what you're saying. Like, I'm the same as you. Like, I went to church with my grandmother when I was a young child. We were brought up Lutheran. That was my grandmother's and I connection. And, you know, my family, we did that. And I went to the Sunday school, and then I went to confirmation, and I was in confirmation. I was about 11, 12 as well, but I questioned everything. I couldn't, I just always have been like that. Like, my mind was good at, you know, seeing things from another way. And when I would present this to the priest, I got kicked out of there. I actually got kicked out of the confirmation because he didn't, you know, he just was like, you just need to do this because this is how it's done. And it's that old that it is true. And I was like, I think that we should question the truth because it may not be true, you know, and I don't feel that this aligns with the truth of a power that's greater than me. And they didn't like that. So I started to really see that. And then I looked at the organization filled with there was a lot of pedophilia, but more so this agenda to curate fear within individuals and display Christ in this you know, fashion that it's a white man with blue eyes that suffered and was able to create these miracles, which, you know, I wasn't there. I can't deny these things. A miracle took place in my life. And to be honest with you, I surrendered my love to Jesus in that jail. I cannot deny that. But what I do know by doing that is that the way we've been fed to believe that this all took place out of a religious order and the order that was dictated through the Bible is not correct. I know that this has been manipulated and curated to fit an agenda, to keep us scared, and to keep the organization wealthy. And when I think about the organization that is spreading love and connecting us to God, being richer than any other organization on the planet and having more control than any other organization on the planet, I know it's not real.
100%.
So,
and when you look at all the other things that don't add up in this whole story, except for Jesus being blue-eyed and white and whatever, but also all the glitches in these stories that are like, Jesus was, in my opinion, the unifier of the poor people, of the revolutionaries, of the ones that were outside of society. He was the one that didn't have much. He was walking barefoot. So as you say, why are we now sitting on golden thrones? And why do you have to pay gold coins to the church if Jesus was actually for the poor ones? You know, like why is marriage such a thing? And you need to commit to one wife forever. Did Jesus have a wife? Like, what is all these things of, why are you hanging the guy that we are supposed to love and that loves us and that we are all one and he's our brother? Why are you hanging him on a cross and showing him to us at every fucking corner, bleeding and suffering? Like, already this is creating such a fear-based, manipulated narrative of constantly confronting us to where it doesn't add up. And I feel like that is the Machiavellic and the super interesting thing about this whole matrix is that it's so much in our faces that we have become blinded by it, right? And that is then the work of peeling the layers apart again and be like, wait a minute. If they have told us from the beginning that this is the truth, then maybe that means that it's actually not. And about everything, right, is really that.
I think that when I look at the images in the Roman Catholic Church of how Jesus and Mary are portrayed, it's baby Jesus wearing a crown. He looks like a king. And then there's Mary right beside him wearing a big, beautiful crown as well. And she's the queen. So not only are you normalizing a hierarchy through a psychological manipulation of a display of two power characters that you've controlled in the method that you want to deliver them in, but you've also normalized the ability for us to believe in kings and queens, which comes with an ideology that these individuals have unmeasurable wealth and they live in castles, which most churches look like. They look like these big Gothic castles where kings and queens live. And let's be real, if we follow this back to the Vatican, there are definitely kings and queens living inside of the Vatican. There's 53 miles of catacombs with tomes, with books, like ancient knowledge, esoteric knowledge within them that no one is allowed access to unless you are part of the Vatican. So when I think of that, I'm like, okay, well, I already know that many stories were left out of the Bible. And I thought, well, who was the guy who got to be the one who would choose that narrative? Because right there, we're already curating a story to fit an agenda. Like, why is the story not open in public for everyone to believe into?
Exactly.
And when I was talking about Jesus' miracles, I mean, like I said, I wasn't there at that time. I don't know what happened. Who am I to judge? You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like you've put a lot of his magic within there, and you've taken, so he's someone we can't really relate to, because Jesus turned water into wine and he parted the seas and he walked on water. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe I wasn't there. I don't know what happened at that time. But what I do know is that there was a poor man who was able to go into areas that had far less from a financial standpoint of wealth and worth and value. And he had this beautiful thing that didn't cost money. And it was an energy that he curated out of love, because he could just go into places with sickness and he could heal the sick by sharing his energy that he cultivated. That is something that every single one of us can do. Yet we don't really put a lot of emphasis in understanding that Jesus was poor and he was built up out of love, and more so became an example of how we could live and lead our lives just by our action. And that didn't cost any money. You didn't have to have any special powers to curate this. You just had to be human. That's the guy I look up to today. That is my understanding of Jesus, and I'm okay to talk about that, because I want to really, I don't know, like I honor Buddha, I honor Krishna, I honor anyone's belief system, because I honor any individual that came here and was an example of how we can lead our lives through an understanding of love and simplistic formats of inner work, because, the human experience is complicated when we're all divided from each other. So we have these beautiful teachers that leave these simplistic philosophies behind for us to apply in our lives. And I think, sure, anyone who's doing that should be celebrated, but not praised. And I don't think that these individuals would ever want that, because they would understand the collective, that we're all the same, so.
Exactly. And that is the ridiculous thing about all of this, is Jesus didn't preach in order to be hanged up on a cross or in order to be removed from his fellows. I mean, he had his disciples, he had people gathered around him. I think this Christ consciousness that we see then also in Buddha or in other examples of that is characterized by the flaming heart, after all. Like, that is the depiction of Jesus that I want to connect to and that I still love to see in some churches around. But as you say, like, by putting a huge golden crown on him, and by, I don't know, even the whole thing of depicting him as a baby is also, yes, okay, it's pure, but at the same time, if one thing we cannot do is get back to the state of being a baby, so are you by that already saying that we cannot attend Christ consciousness? Like, there is all these glitches in the matrix, literally, that are removing us from believing that we can attend that, and that we all have the possibility to embody our Christ consciousness. And that goes through the heart and not through only the crown. I mean, having the whole universe inside us and radiating that outwards is, I think, what connects us to true spirituality. And then by putting all these labels and master stories and, I don't know, removing people into monasteries where they have to close themselves off is, I think, very far off from the actual message of love and union and communion.
Agreed. The indoctrination of many religions within, a child is something that I often think about. We spent some time in Indonesia, and Indonesia is 98% Muslim, and teach their own. Anyone can believe what they want to believe. But when I see a complete country that is having children, and then you're brought up into a belief system from a child, and you never really have an ability to see outside of that, because the normalcy of what happens within 22 million people or 250 million people, however many are there, that's something that always kind of really has me think about how we're living and how we're passing on information. And, then people will say, well, this is, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years old. Like, I mean, what do you mean? Like, this is the way it's done. Well, you look at where religions have kind of got us within their understanding of love and equality and peace and distribution of this knowledge. And this is 2,500 years later, or in other religions much longer. Look at where we are. Like, they're all supporting the same belief system, that we're divided from each other, that fear, power, control, and greed is acceptable. And in some religions, being a woman means you're less. And it's like, that belief system, regardless if you're indoctrinated into it, has many individuals waking up to what it is. So I feel like all of the religions, no matter what you're practicing, no matter who you are, if you're having realizations of the dishonesty or the manipulation that's been placed within this indoctrinated ideology of what your spiritual connection is, it's your responsibility to whatever you believe to speak your truth, and really to understand that equality comes before anything, like that we're all the same. And however you arrive to love, and whatever tool you're using to arrive to that equality collective state of love, I mean, talk about that. Talk about how you got there. That's we owe as we rewrite a new book. I think that's what's happening. That's what's taking place right now. The old book doesn't work because it's been regurgitated for 2,500 years. And I still see people trying to do it in this modern fashion. I'm like, guys, like, it's an old story. Like, it's not relevant. Like, there's aspects of relevancy to, individuals having less and being able to do something magical with a life, for sure. And there's loyalty and trust and natures that are embedded in that story as well. But like, let's get rid of, all of the things that don't work, and write a new story. And all of us allow ourselves to be a character in that story and do something powerful and magical to expose an illuminated truth of what's real.
Agreed. 100%. And that can only be done by being a living example, I feel like, because the issue of that story is already, like you say, it's been regurgitated, it's been vomited upon us by someone else preaching in a white dress, standing higher than us, like all of these labels of disconnection. Whereas actually the story is that we are living it through our every action and word and breath. And I think there again, we come to these polarities of divine masculine and divine feminine, because if we look back at the story, there was Jesus and Mary Magdalene, right? And that is, by the way, where my name comes from. That is why I'm also so connected. Mary Magdalene, Marlene. I'm so much vouching for bringing that element back into the story, because what the Bible is feeding us is that there was this man that did these actions because he was fighting for it, and then in the end he sacrificed himself. But where is the element of passivity and of receiving and of actually, by being a whore, so to say, whatever that might mean? The German word whore actually means full, right? So we also have that element of just being full of life, full of love, going into all the experiences, and not only always doing miracles and being the highest whatever, but also just living, and through that walking the path and inspiring. And I think that is where comes to our own responsibility of, rewriting a new story, like you say, and not believing in what is spoon-fed to us, because every story has something to learn from and to be inspired by. But if we don't actually act upon that wisdom, then it's just empty words, right? Like, intelligence is putting into action what you have learned and what we've been doing in this society, and what our educational system built upon religion also is doing, is just stuffing down stuff children's throats and making them vomit it up on the page again. Like, there is no reflection in it whatsoever. And I think that is the point that we've come to now as a global collective of like, okay, we can't keep on doing it this way. So what do we do? Like, first we need to throw everything out of the window. And then the realization that comes is that we don't have a blueprint for what is to come yet. And we actually have to create it as we go.
Yeah.
And that is where the real work begins.
And I think that like people fear that, right? Because they believe chaos. They're okay with order that's ordered out of the individuals who are creating the chaos because they don't want to live in the chaos, yet they are, but it's organized. So it's like, if we can allow ourselves to dismantle that belief system that it's not all going to fall apart, and that there are many, many leaders and teachers on this planet. They're here right now. They've been here for a long time, and they're awakening day by day, going through their trauma, going through their darkness, alchemizing their light to be an example of how we can lead the new earth. I mean, that's what it takes. It takes all of us to believe in that. And if we continue believing in the narrative that's been laid out for us for the last 2,500 years, we are doing the children a great disservice of allowing them to live in this matrix that does not have their best interests at hand, that does not see them for human beings of love that can create beauty out of nothing. Rather, they will be conformed to belief that their worth and value will be dictated from them through a wealth measurement that is turning digital at this point and controlled in much more alarming rate. And our attention and our identities being curated through algorithms and avatars that are disconnecting us even more. It is our responsibility to take back our power and create the new earth. And that's what we're here to do. This awakening process is absolutely happening, and stepping back into your power just by seeing that, you don't have to focus on the big picture, because you will at some point. You will, when the love really integrates with you and you curate more and more power by alleviating yourself from these dense energies, due to the fear of uncomfortable experiences, you will step into your power and aligning with individuals that are stepping into this power. That's why I'm so grateful to have met you. It's like, when it's a language that people use, though. You use, like, that's how I connect. That's how I know. It's a love language, and it's very hard to fake, because if you fake it, there's so many holes in it. It's because you know it, because you've done the work, or you're doing the work. So it's like, okay, this individual is doing the work. She stepped back into it, or he stepped back into it. You step back into your power and other people's power by knowing what you've done. So it's cool to have certainly found another human being. I just want to ask you, though, I think it's always important, because self-love and self-care is such a big, watered down subject for your practices, because you talk the way you talk and you have this connection to divine feminine within this, sisters out there. Like, what would you say is a modality or mantra or a method, or like what are some of the things that you use in your life to understand and practice your self-love and self-care?
Beautiful question. I think what has taught me the most about self-love is and will always be nature. And we've talked about getting out in nature, walking in the forest, realizing the inherent perfection in all of it, even if it's not always pretty and beautiful, and trying to look at ourselves with the same awe and marvel and just acceptance that we use when looking at nature, and not to try to put all these beliefs of ideologies and perfectionism and whatever on top of ourselves. And I think what has the most connected me to self-care, and to actually caring also not only for the spirit, but also for this physical vessel, because that is in itself also what holds our love and with which we can touch and infuse this life around us is the breath. Actually, I think I can not, not tell people enough to really connect to the breath and to find out how that is a link to consciousness and a link to inhaling life more fully, literally. Like, it's interesting again when you look at the words, because in French, for example, or also in Spanish, inspiration is the breath. And there is a way of really infusing ourselves with the divine intelligence that is around us by filling our lungs more fully and by tending to this vessel, by not constantly being constricted, because what do our lungs do is also store energy, right? So if we are constantly not living to our full capacity and not using our lungs in the full potential, then that is what is going to be transported in our lives. And basically, this whole fear is also a restriction. It's a resistance. What do we do if we are really shocked? We hold our breath, we get tense, we get stuck. So in order for us to tap back into the openness and the flow of life, I think it is really crucial to become very aware of the way that we breathe and in which moments of our life we may breathe more shallow or less deeply, and really always come back to this and being able to hold it also, and not always rushing through life and rushing through the breathing and not having it be something unconscious, but really nurturing it as our connection to this existence. And yeah, I think that is the things that I could give everyone as a beautiful challenge, to become more mindful of our breath in every moment and to really try to deepen that connection to nature through that also.
I love that. And I think a lot of like over here in the West, people fear loneliness, although you can put them in a crowded room and they still feel alone. But when we're on the inner work journey, a lot of like everything and everyone I knew went away because you're aligning with like a different frequency. But I love how you incorporate nature. And I often talk about this as well, because you're never alone with love and you're never alone with nature. And if you're not sure about your connection to love, your connection to nature can support an understanding of something more to really help guide you there, because it's filled with life. And although it doesn't use words to communicate, it still transmutes an energy to you by holding frequencies that do not serve you. Like you were saying with grounding and whatnot, I think that that's a beautiful thing. So I often like to bring that to people's awareness. Take a look at your friends and I'll show you your future. If your friends are, you know what I'm saying? Like if your friends are shit, you know, and that's normalized within life, or they're living from this ideology that success is defined through brands and materialism, take a look at your friends and I'll show you your future. Like that's normal. So if you do step into this power, Marlene and I aligned simply because we were on the same frequency. And I think it's important for people to hear, like, you will align with other individuals that are living within the same frequency, because there's so many of us out there. Just really waiting and you know, encouraging other people to step into this power so we have larger communities.
That is where the solitude can really hinder us, right? Or this fear of being alone, because I also do believe, like you, we have to walk through the desert and we have to cross very, very long valleys, sometimes of losing all our friends, losing all our social circles, and feeling like a complete weirdo and a crazy person in order to actually embody this frequency and not fall back into the traps again of going to talk shit and drink beers with some people just in order to not be alone, and just in order to not face our shadows, and just in order to not face what it means to be alone and be with yourself, actually, because that is also the funny thing. Are you alone or are you all one? Are you actually connected to yourself? Because that is when you are never going to be alone. And that is where nature comes as such a medicine and as such a beautiful reminder, because you are never alone. If you're actually in nature and connected to all of that, you're going to see that this whole illusion of separateness is such a big hoax, because have you ever been to the forest? Like, who are you to say that you're alone, man? Like, never, ever, even if we're just talking about visible, like, let's not even take into account the invisible worlds, but it's such a human thing to feel that we will be lonely if we let go of who we are and we rather put on some masks and play some personas and whatever in order to fit in, without realizing that only by being alone for some time and by realizing who you actually are deep down and by connecting to that resonance, you're gonna make space to meet people like I am meeting you now, that we can like dive right deep into these topics and be like, who have I been in the years of my teens to just talk random bullshit with people that I think are my friends? Like, it's such a liberation to actually be alone for some time, to realize what you don't need anymore and to shed these layers of distortion and to throw some stuff out the window and make space for the new. Like,
And yeah, you're right. I think a lot of where people's attention is that they need to be accepted by other people. And one of the biggest tools I used within my life, uh, along with believing in myself, was accepting myself, accepting who I was. So it didn't matter to me if no one accepted me, because I had accepted myself for who I was and who I was trying to discover. I even in that moment had no idea who I was. I just walked away from 23 years of addiction and all these mental health behaviors, but I allowed myself to learn about myself. And you're right. That's when stillness was uncomfortable at times, and patience was definitely becoming a teacher for me, to be alone with myself, because that was where I was curating this relationship back to myself, because that's what we really, in order to create authentic connections externally from us, you first have to create an authentic connection with yourself. And that's, what a beautiful part of the journey. Yes, it's uncomfortable because we've been disconnected from ourselves for so long, but lean into that, and just that, that was I think back, and even I'm always, man, every 6 months I'm changing who I am and my environment and my community. And I'm just leveling. I don't want to say leveling up, but it kind of is that way, because when you peel back, you peel back a layer, you're standing at the peak of a new mountain, but the base of another one. So it's like, yes, you are leveling up on the journey within, and it's a beautiful thing.
yes.
How the heck do people, you know what? Just want people to know, like, Marlene and I have had maybe 5 WhatsApp messages back and forth, found each other I can't even remember
I can't even remember also. I think you texted me because of the numbers on my, something completely random. You stumbled on my Instagram profile and I had 444-999-555
Hey.
as followers and things. And then you were like, okay, there is something there. And then I think within one message exchange, we were like, okay, I think we need to have a chat.
It's crazy. And so I'm totally going to use this for a podcast. I hope you're okay with that. It's just a beautiful thing, beautiful conversation. And, I have this huge energy rushing through me right now, because it's like, I'm so grateful for the universe, and I'm grateful for myself as well for doing the work to be able to step into this power to align with humans like you that are doing what you do in Germany. And I'm just like, this is it, it's like, what a magical time to be a part of. Like, we're rewriting a new history for, the children to live in a more awakened state. So do you offer anything that people, because I'm sure there's a lot of women that'll probably listen to this and be like, hey man, this she's got some pretty cool, your truth is your power, and your awareness and your ability to just step into that divine feminine. It'll be attractive for a lot of women.
Thank you. I am at a constant process of reshaping what I am bringing out into the world, but I do offer not only one-on-ones, but also workshops. Mostly I am guiding people through a somatic experience into their own felt experiences of things. So I'm working a lot with trauma-based, trauma-informed healing methods. But also in general, I would say I am working with people that are willing to confront their deepest shadows and that are willing to actually take a deep, blunt look at the mirror at how they are complicit in all of the systems of destruction and how they are holding themselves small before everything else. Because I do believe that a lot of the mainstream wellness, I don't know, healthcare systems are built on the same extractive and destructive systems that this capitalist system is built upon. And only by looking at how our addiction to healing and to do yet another plant ceremony and buy the newest course for 3333 or whatever, I want to step out of all of that and actually work with the people that are willing to confront their shadows, not only to love them back into integration, but also to first go the really uncomfortable step of seeing where they have contributed to what they are actually standing against. So if anyone feels called to do that work, there is a website that you can contact me through. And there is also workshops that I offer from time to time online, but also sometimes in person, mostly journeying through all the emotions and especially through the more suppressed emotions, especially in the feminine, which would be holy rage, quite specifically, to reclaim our power and to see how we can stand up against those systems of oppression and injustice in us, first and foremost, because we have all been conditioned to these societies.
I love it. What's the name of the website? Tom?
It's inono.me. Inono.me. That's Greek to honor my roots a little bit, and it means unify.
So Inono is ENONO.me for those.
Yes. Exactly.
And I'll put all the links in the descriptions and everything like that to you. And what's your Instagram?
It's the same, inono.me. Easy and simple. And for everyone that wants to follow a journey of self-discovery and confrontation, there's also my new YouTube channel, Radical Provocation, which is probably going to be updated more and more as I tap more into sharing from my heart and confronting the stuff that is not always comfortable, but very, very important at this stage.
Yeah, I like we started this whole podcast off of that, like just listening to your words and listening to your truth on those YouTube videos they're great. So to see more of that is a wonderful thing. I also have some really wonderful things happening over here in the West with a lot of organizations. We're opening up a 6-week course to help people alchemize their fears using love. But I would like to use you as a resource on my website so that individuals have a direct line to access you, if you're okay with that.
Wonderful. That would be a pleasure. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So that will be a way other people can find you. And I just want to say, like, that was an amazing time. It's so cool. I'm very grateful for you.
I'm very grateful for the invitation. Thank you.
Much love, girl.
Much love. I see you. I hear you. Keep on doing the work.